All right, and welcome to. Well, I guess this isn't really an Illuminated Discussions like normal since it's just me and Sophia here talking about the best and worst games of the year.
I found this year very disappointing.
Yeah, there was some good stuff, but I'm kind of torn over am I just disappointed because it wasn't a very good year, or is it because it followed up last year?
For me, it was a lot of games were massively overhyped, and a ton of them just didn't do it for me.
Yeah, I did get that feeling with quite a few games, especially for Dragon Quest.
What was wrong with Dragon Quest
See,
XI?
I actually liked the game. Like when I did my top 10, it made it to my number 4 spot. But the reviews it was getting, like the greatest Dragon Quest ever made, one of the greatest RPGs in years, if not of all time. It
Yeah, that's pretty hyperbolic.
it was it was fun.
That's kind of how I felt about a lot of games this year was, you had all these games getting like tens and stuff, and I would play them and I'd just be like, that was fine. Like I'm one of the people
About a
that
lot of games this year was, you had a
Yeah,
that
I
was
just
weird.
I just kicked onto a different window so I could see if there was anything coming up on chat, and it just auto played the stream.
Yeah. Anyways, what I was saying was like you had a ton of games getting high scores, and I would play them. And I know a lot of people love Spider-Man, but I was very down on that game. I enjoyed the story and like the combat was fun, but those open world activities and just like what you actually did in the game just was so dated and dull to me that I wasn't high on it. And then you had God of War, and like none of these two are like in my worst games of the year or anything, but they're not in my top tens either. And then you had God of War, which like on a technical level was fantastic, and I did enjoy the story, but for a series known for its like big epic boss fights, the game had very few of them, and like how you always had to fight the same troll. Like uh, I think we should say though there'll be mild spoilers for some of the games we play here for everyone listening, if that's fair.
Yeah, there will be some
Like uh,
nothing big, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But there's this moment in the game where you have to go to hell, and I won't say why, but you're going to hell, and it's supposed to be this big epic moment, and so you get to hell after going through like this really like cool dramatic story beat, and like the boss you fight in hell, what should be this like crazy epic boss fight, is a reskin troll that you've already fought like 10 times before. And so because of like stuff like that, like God of War, just one of those games was very disappointing to me.
See, when I put my list together, that made my number 4 spot, and I agree with everything you said.
Yeah.
That's kind of how this year. I'm thinking I should probably have knocked it down a few pegs because I don't think it was better than Katamari Reroll. Now that I'm looking at this list,
Hmm. And I can't fault you for that. Like, it's not even in my top games. Like, I had fun with it. It was fine, but it wasn't. When I play a God of War game, and I like how they redid the combat, I actually enjoyed the story. I thought the story was really well done. And no spoilers on the end, but like the end actually made me curious where the story's gonna go. So I'll play the next game because I'm hooked. But just it felt like you're always fighting the same things, and the game had so few of those epic boss moments. Like I don't think a single boss fight beat out the very first one you fight, like the one you get in like the first like hour. No other fight topped that.
that
And
fight
I
was
was
awesome. It
it
got me
was
so hyped for the rest of the game,
I know, and
and
you're thinking like you're gonna get these big epic moments, these like, you're fucking Kratos, you're gonna get this cool stuff, and it just you didn't.
yeah, I was very much let down. Again, though, still on my top 10. Like, what is it? I'm looking at my list right now. My number 10 entry is a game called Shotgun Legend. It is, it's all right. It's basically a Legend of Zelda clone, but you have a shotgun instead of a sword. It's
Yeah,
like it's one of those little like novel games. You're like, hey, this was fun, and it was $2.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't something that should make a top 10.
No, and for mine, I didn't even hit 10 games because I didn't want to put games on my list that I was like disappointed and down on. Like if I had to, Spider-Man God of War would make the top 10, but I didn't want to put them there because I'm like, but I was so down on them in a lot of ways that I just don't feel like they have a place. So I think my overall list, I think, is 7 games for my top games of the year, and then my like worst games of the year is 6. And then a couple of honorable mentions. Just to get those out of the way, Monster Hunter World probably would have found a place on my list had I played more of it, but I wasn't in the mood for like a super grind heavy game. So I haven't like dived deep into it. And then Dragon Ball Fighter Z, we just got, and that's pretty cool so far, but I haven't played enough of it to feel confident to put it on. But it's an honorable mention because I think if I played more of it, it would find a place.
I didn't play either one of those 2 games. Like, I've been meaning to jump back into Monster Hunter. I think the last time I played one was the PS2 version where you had to have the hard drive bought. And it just never did anything for me.
Yeah. I've never been too high on the series either, but I appreciate a lot of what they did with this one.
Yeah, what made the bottom of your list? Like, what would you put as your number 7?
For my Game of the Year ones?
Yes.
All right, so I didn't have like a specific order on these, but I think my 7th, on this number 7 would be Firewall Zero Hour. It's a PSVR game that plays a little bit like Rainbow Six Siege, and it's a really unique and fun experience to play in VR. Like it's one of the rare like first-person games you actually feel like you're there, and it's a multiplayer game with like destruction and objectives. It plays a lot like Siege, but not quite. And in VR, it's pretty cool. Like when you get shot or when you see an enemy, it feels like you're there. It's one of like the first, like it's so immersive, but it has a few hangups that it couldn't be much higher. Like, when I was into the game, there was only like, when a game ended, you go to the menu and there's only like one main round. So games are over too quick. So you spend a lot of time loading. And sadly, it's one of the PSVR games that gets me sick if I play it too long. So it's not one I can go into a ton, which isn't a fault of the game. Just certain VR games really make me nauseous. But overall, it's still like a really solid game that if people like PSVR, I highly recommend.
I've never liked VR. That's just me, though.
It's very hit or miss, but there's been experiences in VR that I adore, like Super Hot in VR is a favorite. That's just a blast. But a lot of people...
Which one was Super Hot? I know I've heard of that one.
Time moves really, really slowly until you move. So like it's like kind of like a first-person puzzle game to like take out the enemies in the right order before you die, but like you can dodge, and if you stand still, everything pretty much stands still. They just move super slow.
Okay, I remember seeing clips of that one. That looked interesting.
In VR, like when you get shot, it feels like you've been shot. It feels really good in VR.
If I ever bother to get a VR setup, I might give it a shot.
Yeah, I wouldn't say get one yet. Like I enjoy a lot of what I played in VR, but there's been very few experiences where it's like you have to go out to get it yet. A lot of people are still struggling to put out top quality content, and there's a lot of shit.
Yeah.
And they're very expensive, the games, for what you get.
I mean, it makes sense considering what they probably have to go into to actually develop and test these things.
Yeah, that's understandable. So what's your number 10, I guess it would be?
Well, the 10 was Shotgun Legend.
Your number 9.
Actually, my number 9 and 8 are both remakes. I've got Radiant Historia Perfect Chronology.
Mm-hmm.
And then Secret of Mana at number 8.
That's fair. I was questioning what to do with remakes because I think Dark Souls remaster would have made it. Oh, it's not a remake, but the remaster of Dark Souls would have made it on. But I was like, I don't know if that technically counts as like, they didn't change up very much of it, so it's still very much Dark Souls. So I held off on that. But I got that and had a blast. So I haven't, those 2 games you said I haven't heard of. They sound very JRPG like.
Well, Radiant Historia was a JRPG back on the not the 3DS, the DS originally. Now it's on 3DS. It's fine. You're basically jumping back and forth between 2 potential timelines. The game originally let me down when I first played it because it sounded like there's going to be like all these branching paths. No, it's just 2 timelines.
Yeah, I can understand. Like if you're set up with that mindset, you're going to get all these different choices.
Yeah, but it's a fun game. Mm-hmm. It's fun jumping back and forth to see how like the 2 different timelines would play out. You have this white grimoire that lets you get away with doing this. It's not like the most deep story. Like you kind of figure out who the guy with the black grimoire you hear about is within like the first hour of the game. Yeah. But they try to play it up as this big reveal.
Yeah, that can.
Like, yeah, it was that guy. I know.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
But I'm surprised you didn't hear Secret of Mana.
Oh, is that okay? No, I know that one. Yeah. I'm actually surprised that made your list because a lot of people seemed really down on the remake.
It had problems. Okay. Yeah. I probably get a bit of shit for this one because like before it actually came out, I replayed it on like the Super Nintendo Classic that came out. Mm-hmm. It has a lot of the same issues in the original version.
So do you think like a lot of people are just kind of thinking more highly of it because of like when they played it?
Yeah, like when it came out, it really was quite an original and unique game, but a lot of things about it haven't aged well.
Yeah, I have it on an emulator and I've been meaning to go. I have not played that since like it's at least been 15 plus years, so I don't remember a whole lot. Oh yeah, at the time I loved it. But I recently was given a present that has 9,000 games on it, and that's one of them. So that's been one of them on the higher end of the list. I need to go play.
Yeah, again, it's worth playing. I see why it's considered a classic because of all of it did for the genre and all that, but it's a little weird with hit detection sometimes in the original version. Before you get a second party member, it actually is possible to kind of get stun locked and murdered.
And this one was published by Square Enix, wasn't it? The remake?
Yeah. I think they were the original too, weren't they?
I believe so. Or Squaresoft, it might have been at the time.
Yeah.
But with the new one, and I'm kind of going off the top of my head here, I might be misremembering, but when that came out, the remake, the one you played, wasn't there an issue with, wasn't it like a port from a mobile version or something? There was something weird about
the one on the Steam. I think there was one that came out on Steam that was that. This is
okay. Oh, okay.
This is fully remade from the ground up, practically.
Okay, so I'm slightly mixing up the two. I haven't played the remake, obviously. So.
Yeah. Like some people were kind of shitting on the art design, which sometimes the original looked better. Sometimes this one had some cooler looking things. I thought it was a bit hit and miss on what was updated. Otherwise, maps are all pretty much the same, just in 3D now. Hit detection's slightly better, except for the miss rate. The end was kind of glitched.
Mm-hmm. I was kind of surprised they sold it as, because I think I saw it at a game store semi-recently. It was like, it was $40, I think.
I think that's how much it came out at.
Yeah, I almost feel like for something like this, they would have done better to keep it in the 20 range, even if it is like a remake. I feel like something like this, had they kept it on a lower end, probably would have sold and done better.
Yeah. Probably. Like, I don't know how well this one actually did. Like, I didn't hear anything about it after it came out other than people were like, well, I'm kind of sad now.
So how about I share my number 6? This one's actually a weird one in that It's Far Cry 5. And I've never been high up on the Far Cry series. Like I've played the originals and then 2, 3, and 4. And I've always just been like, yeah, they're fine. But I actually had a lot of fun with Far Cry 5. It's the most fun I've had with a Ubisoft game in a long time. So that
Weren't
felt
people pretty
nice.
down on that game though?
A lot of people I think were down on the story. The main villain isn't as interesting as he could have been. I actually thought he was okay, but I think the story really sucked. Like the story kind of weighs it down a little bit because there's this cult, which is a really cool idea, but they maintain their control with this like hallucinogenic drug. So like a lot of other Far Cry games, you've got like the hallucination scenes, and I think the hallucination stuff kind of like weighed it down. And then there's a very annoying uh, there's the 3 regions you need to take down each one of like the family members, like the lieutenants or whatever of the cult. And you fill up a bar, and every time you fill up the bar, you get to a certain point, and then you get kidnapped, and like you do like a story thing. You go back out into the world, fill up the bar like another bit, you get like another kidnap scene, and that happens in every district. So like as these like cult leaders are being taken out, you've been kidnapped like 6 to 8 times or whatever it is, and you escape every time, and it's like, all right, when you guys knock me out, why don't you just shoot me in the fucking head now? Your problem solved. And so from like a narrative structure, the story kind of fell apart, but I really dug the ending. I'm sure it's been spoiled for everybody now because of the Far Cry New Dawn stuff, but the game ends with like the world getting nuked, because throughout the game on the radio is this stuff about global tensions. I think stuff with like North Korea is one of them. So the game actually ends on this apocalyptic, like nukes are going off, and I thought that was kind of like out of nowhere and really cool. But just like it's on my list because excuse me, while the story falls apart, the gameplay is just a lot of fun. It was enjoyable to just do crazy stuff in the world, and it looked gorgeous.
I've never sat through a Far Cry game. Like that style just never really appealed to me. They all seem fine.
Yeah, and a lot of people were high up on 3, and I played it and I was like, it didn't do much for me. I never even finished 3. And then I played 4 and beat that, and I was just like, it's okay, it's fine. It's a Ubisoft open world game. In a lot of ways, Far Cry 5 is still like an Ubisoft open world game, but they've streamlined a lot of it, and I was just able to have a lot of fun. And so just having fun, it made my list, because I don't think a lot of games this year really just gave me like, I would just play it with a goofy smile on my face.
That was number 6 for you, right?
That is correct.
Oh wow, I skipped over 7 on mine. But yeah, my number 7 was just Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth Hackers Memories. It's basically the last Cyber Sleuth game that came out. Like you're just playing someone different, like from a different perspective of that story.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else about the game, it's just the same game over again. I kind of didn't want to include it because there's like nothing here to talk about that wasn't already said about the first one.
Yeah, but I mean, if you had fun with it, you had fun with it. So,
like anything on this list, 7 and lower, I don't know if these games would even be in consideration for a top 10 in another year for me.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about some on my list. Like I was trying to be like, I really need to hit I need to hit a certain quota here. I don't want to sound like this downer, but this year was just so disappointing for me. I just wasn't as high up on a lot of stuff.
I know. But yeah, like my number 6 is the first game that would probably be considered, and that was Super Smash Bros. Ultimate.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm sure most people would think this should be higher on the list. I'm just not a huge fighting game fan.
That's pretty much what it is with me too. I don't play a whole ton of fighting games, very few. I am looking forward to that upcoming anime one, Jump Force.
Oh god.
It looks so corny.
I don't even know what to think about it, especially when who was it? It was now Light from Death Note, or not Light, Kira.
Yeah, and then they have Yu-Gi-Oh, which I don't know why, but I'm stupidly excited to play as Yu-Gi-Oh and just like
Yeah, I really want to. I just don't even know what to think though. I will probably get it and play it because it has kind of the same appeal as Smash Brothers, but somehow more ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking Naruto versus Goku. I wonder who would fight.
It'll be goofy but fun, so hopefully that'll be on my Game of the Year list next year.
I'm just hoping Yugi's the most broken character. Well, Yami, I should say. Atem, whatever his name actually was. I think it was Atem.
I don't remember.
It's not important.
No, but I used to as a kid, I loved the show. I would make sure I was awake on Saturday mornings to watch new episodes of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I couldn't tell you most of the plot points, but at the time I loved it.
Okay. Not involving games, any games, but I remember because like 4Kids did the original dub. Did you ever see the version without all of the stuff 4Kids cut out?
No, the only version I would have seen is what aired on. For me, I think it was called Kids WB was the channel. So that would have been the 4Kids one.
The like censored 4Kids version is easier to take seriously than the original version of Yu-Gi-Oh! Like there was the whole match they had with this. Who was it? Arcanus. He's the other guy who used Dark Magician.
Yeah.
On some episode. But him and Yugi had the match, and they were basically hooked into that machine, and there was that like spinning purple disc that when your life points hit 0, it would hit you and send you to the Shadow Realm.
Yeah, I remember the Shadow
Realm. The original version, that does not happen. It was just a buzzsaw, and they're going to get their legs hacked off for losing a children's card game.
That sounds so much more fun.
Or when freaking Kaiba and Yugi are like dueling together against those two guys on the building top. They're not getting dropped into the Dark Realm if they lose. They're just getting dropped off of a building and plummeting to their deaths.
Well, isn't there a similar fight where Kaiba's fighting Yu-Gi-Oh! And he's like, if you beat me, I'm going to get knocked off this building if you do this move.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't change regardless of the version. That's just silly.
Before we derail this much further, though, we should get back to Games of the Year. Yeah. Though I would be down for a Yu-Gi-Oh! Podcast for shits and giggles.
That'd be good for like 30 minutes or so.
It pretty much, because every episode just evolved into the same, like, yeah.
But yeah, that was my whole point, though, is for some reason the censored version you can take more seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, on to number 5 now, I think.
All right. My number 5 is one I haven't beaten yet. I actually just recently got it, but I'm super high on it, and that's Subnautica.
I know absolutely nothing about Subnautica other than it exists.
Oh, I'm loving it. It's easily turning into one of my favorite games of the year. The only reason it's not lower is I haven't beaten it. But it's a survival game where you crash onto a planet in a bunch of water and you explore under the water, you find stuff. There's secrets everywhere. You gather resources, build stuff, you build like labs and all this stuff. And it's what No Man's Sky should have been. It's survival exploration done right. And it looks gorgeous, and it's a lot of fun the world is seemingly massive, and it's just fun to just swim around and find stuff.
It's another type of genre, the survival, I never got too into, so I can't really comment on how much of that would appeal to me.
That's kind of the same for me, and I'm digging in this one. Like, there's a water bar, a food bar, and a health bar and stuff. And when you're underwater, there's an oxygen bar. And usually I hate trying to manage all that stuff. But this one's not too difficult. And they do it right. It's a survival game that does just so much right that it's making me enjoy a survival game.
I might have to check it out eventually.
I highly recommend it. I only would say if you can play it on PC because my partner has it on PC and it looks and runs gorgeous. I'm playing on PS4 and it's got a lot of frame rate issues.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So it's definitely much more optimized towards the PC. Unlike the PS4 version is playable, but it does have some problems.
I think it's available on that Epic Game Store now too, not just Steam.
I think you missed your window. It was there. It was the free game, but I think either today or tomorrow it gets replaced with Super Meat Boy. So you may have missed it, but you may have not. I don't remember.
I can just check later.
So what's your number 5?
The third remake to show up on this list, Katamari Reroll. I love Katamari Damacy.
Yeah. I really want to play it, and I'm really bummed it's not coming to PlayStation or Xbox.
Yeah. It is just so silly. Like,
And
even playing it again after all this time, it is still so bizarre. Like, I struggled to kind of classify what kind of game Katamari is. Because it plays like it'd be an action-adventure game, but that's not right.
I think it would be a puzzle
game
of sorts.
Is the closest thing I could... That's the best way to look at it, is a puzzle game.
An action puzzler, I don't know. It kind of defies its own genre just a little bit.
Yeah, it's Katamari. There's nothing else like it.
No. It's so weird.
The humor is so bizarre.
The music is gloriously bizarre. The whole thing is just... Yeah, I love Katamari Damacy.
I think my favorite thing about that whole series is We Love Katamari, the second game. The premise for the game was they made it because so many people liked the first game. Like, I know you can... That's why a sequel gets made. I just didn't realize that could be the hook to the plot.
I never played the sequels. Is that they straight up are just like, it's because you guys wanted this?
Only the second one.
That's cool.
It just keeps getting weirder too the longer the series has went on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the first one is the most normal of the games. But yeah. I love that they brought it back. Like, the only issue I had on the Switch is the joysticks aren't quite as nice to use when they're not the setup they are on the PlayStation controller.
Mm-hmm.
It feels a bit nicer playing this game with the joysticks like that. Otherwise, it still plays fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen a few videos and watched some reviews of it, and I was like, I really want to play that again. Because
it was worth it.
Yeah. I'm hoping it comes to some of the other stuff, because I will definitely get it if it does.
I think it's on PC, actually, isn't it?
I think so, yeah. It was PC, but my computer's a Mac, so I don't do a lot of computer gaming, sadly.
That makes sense.
So, number 4, mine is Tetris Effect. That is another game. I've played it in PSVR, but you can play it without VR, and that game is just a trip. How it blends the music with Tetris, and to say Tetris is exciting again sounds weird, but it's a game that made Tetris exciting to play, and just this like really great experience. It's the people who made it are deep into music theory, so the way they've blended music with what you're doing and just it's like an emotional roller coaster of music, and some levels are going to be like bright and bubbly, others are going to be dark and foreboding, and just it's this musical experience as you play Tetris that is just phenomenal.
I hate Tetris. I think I'm the only man alive who hates Tetris. I feel like I'm a monkey sticking blocks in a hole.
Okay.
that's my only thought on Tetris.
I've never been the highest on Tetris. Like, I can kind of understand people not liking it, and it's it's not a game I really seek out a lot. I think it's one of those games that is timeless. Like as it goes to video games, I'm not going to say it's the perfect video game, but it is one that you it's a good formula for a good game. But as someone who hasn't played Tetris in a very long time, just Tetris Effect really pulled me right in. But I can understand you not being a fan of Tetris.
Yeah, I've just come to accept I'm the only guy who just hates it. I don't really know why.
You might be. You might be the only human on Earth who dislikes Tetris.
I just get angry when I play it, even if I'm doing well.
Mm-hmm.
I have no logical explanation for that.
Fair enough. So what's your number 4?
Yeah, my number 4 was God of War, which we already kind of talked about.
Yeah.
I got nothing else to add other than I kind of hated the last twist of the game involving your kid, which I won't spoil here.
Yeah, I actually enjoyed that. I've always enjoyed how the God of War series takes mythologies and kind of twists them and kind of changes them a little bit. But like, I really wanted to like God of War more than I was able. Like, it looks phenomenal. The story is great. On a technical level, it's a masterpiece. But it was just fighting like the same things over and over. And then like I did the 9 Valkyrie fights, and I was like, okay, cool. I'm fighting 9 of the same bosses over and over with only slight variations. It's like, this is a series known for these big epic fights, and I got so little of that.
Yeah, I was let down by a lot of that, and I hated your kid.
And just like my biggest hang up with the game was how often you fight those big lumbering troll things that hold like the big blocks. Like
I stopped counting how many times they show up.
And if they were just an enemy in the world, which sometimes they were, that was fine, but they would just reskin them for boss fights. So like you would there's this moment where you have to fight, it's like, oh, you're gonna fight 2 of them now. It's like, oh, okay, cool. That's not a challenge. That's not new or unique. And then, like I said, the one in hell where they just reskinned it and you could teleport a bit. And I was like, you're in fucking hell. I should be fighting some like epic thing. And it's just, here's a reskin. I just, God of War didn't do it for me.
After we finish this list, I'll go ahead and spoil the thing I hated about that twist. But we can wait till later for that.
That's fair.
Yeah, so number 3.
Mine is Red Dead Redemption 2. I have a love-hate relationship with this game. This is one I reviewed for nichegamer.com, and I gave it an 8.5. And there's so much I liked about it, but then there's also so much I just got so annoyed by. And it's a game like I love it and I hate it at the same time. I enjoyed the story for the most part, though it did get overly long and drag. And there's one, I'm not going to spoil it, but there's a really dumb plot detour in chapter 5. I think it's the entirety of chapter 5. And it's like the game changes genres from like a cowboy game to like, it almost felt like you're in a pirate game for a little bit. And it was just goofy and dumb. But for the most part, I enjoyed the story, but where the game kind of fell apart with me was all the missions kind of break down into the same thing, especially towards the end. It just becomes like, go to this area, clear out the enemies, you're going to ride away. As you're riding away, kill the enemies. And with gunplay, and that's not the greatest. Like, it's okay, it works. But the enemy AI was really lacking. And so like all the fights became repetitive. And so there's all these things I'm down on. But then again, I just loved exploring the world. Arthur Morgan is probably one of my all-time favorite video game characters now. I really love the depiction of him. So if like everything I'm majorly down on, there's another thing I just really loved. And so that's why it's 3rd on my list.
Yeah, that happens a lot with some games. Like I can never get into just, Rockstar games in general.
Mm-hmm.
Red Dead seemed fine. It looked like I'd enjoy it a lot more than the Grand Theft Auto games, at least.
I think what Rockstar really needs to do is they really need to fix gunplay and AI. Like, they put all this time and effort into these details, and like the game looks stunning. It's amazing. And I wish they put just a percentage of that effort into making enemies that are fun to fight against, and they would have a, a 10 out of 10 in my eyes. But there's so many things that just kind of fall apart. And the enemy AI is like my biggest hang up because you have a 100 plus hour game. If all the fights feel the same, that 100 hours gets really stretched out in the mind.
Yeah, there are times with those big open world games, I feel they'd be better if they just kind of condensed it some more, stop trying to pad out the gameplay so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like the game ends with an epilogue that takes like many hours. I think it was 21 missions, and that doesn't count all the time you have to ride your horse everywhere. And it got overly long, especially as a reviewer who I binged 100 plus hours of that game in 6 days. Or it was like 5.5. Like I was playing that game, no joke, for like 15 plus hour days to get it done so I could get the review out in a timely manner. And by the end, I was so fucking exhausted. But again, like I feel like I'm being really down on it, but for like everything I'm down on, there's just another thing I adored. And so it's just this weird conflicting game, but it's my number 3 game of the year.
See, for me, my number 3 ends with Dragon Quest XI. Despite me being the reviewer that seems to hate it more than other people, it's still a Dragon Quest game.
Mm-hmm.
You still got like a classic formula and story that Dragon Quest just will never deviate from, I think, to its benefit.
Yeah.
And yet, while the series as a whole is kind of like looked at as the archetypical just JRPG, while at the same time, no other game really feels like Dragon Quest. So it has all the good stuff Dragon Quest has going for it. But my God, the story jumps back and forth between being great and me just wanting to pound my head into the desk.
That's how I've been feeling about a lot of JRPGs for a while now. Like they have like these great high moments, but so many of them just have these like overly long stories or just little beats that just kind of, yeah.
Like my favorite character in Dragon Quest XI is a guy called Eric. Now the reason he's my favorite character is he's like my spirit animal. All right, there's a lot of times in this game where most of your characters decide they're going to do something really, really stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And Eric's the one that just kind of sits there going, what is wrong with all of you? But is powerless to do anything to stop it.
Yeah.
So I empathize with him.
Like, yeah, that's how you feel as the player.
Like the best example of this is you're chasing after a merchant because you find out he got a hold of the bow of the Yggdrasil tree.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically what's driving a lot of the plot at this point is you need to get this thing because it might help you get to the Yggdrasil and basically save the world.
Yeah.
All right. You get to this town. You find out the merchant had gotten on a ship and taken off before you got there, but the ports are getting shut down for a festival. Now, in this situation, you would think, hey, we need to talk to the mayor here or somebody to try to get on a boat to get to this merchant as quick as we can.
Yeah.
Like, it's a festival. We can just wait. What? We're trying to save the world. And Eric's all, what's wrong with you people? It's like, nope, we're not doing this. You guys can go fuck around. Then you and him go talk to the mayor. Now, don't get me wrong. Stuff comes up because of the story that prevents you from just being able to hop on the boat. But no one knew this was going to happen before that.
Why save the world when you can play bobbing for apples with the townsfolk? Come on now.
It's like that the whole game. Just the entire game, this happens. And Eric's just the one there.
I love how we're talking our game of the years, and at the same time, we're saying so many things we just have issues with. that kind of just sums up 2018 in gaming for me.
I wish I could get into like Monster Hunter, so I could at least have that and go, hey, here's a game with no real issues. It's a fantastic Monster Hunter game, but I'm not a Monster Hunter fan.
Yeah, I'm not really either, but I liked what I've seen about it. My hang up with Monster Hunter and why I haven't played it yet is I haven't been in a mood for a while to play something that's so grind heavy where you just have to go fight beasts over and over and over again, waiting for that random drop you need so you can make the item you need to go fight, like repeatedly fight the next thing to get the over and over until you get the random drop. And like that's definitely a gameplay mechanic that can be fun, but you have to be in a particular mood for. Yeah. And I just haven't been in the mood yet. So Monster Hunter will probably be one I eventually get into in 2019. I need to be in like a very particular mindset for that.
Indeed.
So number 2. My number 2 game of the year is one I absolutely love. And it's a much better game than my number 1, but I only put it as number 2 because it's technically a game from 2017. Only the PS4 version came out in 2018, and that's Divinity Original Sin 2, which is one of the games of the generation. It's phenomenal. It technically is a PC game from 2017, so that's why I made it my number 2, but it should be in my 1 spot. Just how fucking good it is. I have nothing downer to say about Divinity Original Sin 2. That game is amazing.
I don't know why I haven't played that game yet.
It
looks like something I would like. I just keep doing something else.
It's challenging, it's funny, it's a great RPG, it's well made. So many things are thought out. It's one like anything at any time can go wrong and you just go with it. It's a game that just like things can change constantly and there's some great story beats. It's hilarious. The fights get really freaking hard. Like you have to be strategic and I love it. I have nothing bad to say about this game. It's again, it should be my number 1, but on a technicality, it's not.
See, I know how that goes. Like when it's a game, like do you count the version that came out that you played or the first version of the game that came out?
And like I count it as the version I played, but it's also not a 2018 game technically, so I'm just particular about that, I guess.
Yeah, like it kind of happened to me. Like I played Hollow Knight this year, which I played the PC version, which was last year. I kind of wish I grabbed it on the Switch so I could have justified putting it on this list because the Switch version came out this year.
Yeah.
But I don't know how that one plays.
I've been playing the PS4 version and it's good. I like it. I'm not as high on it as a lot of other people, but it's definitely not a bad game. Like it's a very like strong 8 like out of 10 for me.
It's one of those games like the more mobility type of abilities you unlock as you progress, the funner it gets.
Yeah.
Like you're almost playing a completely new game by the end of it. But I really liked Hollow Knight.
It looks gorgeous too. Like their art they went with just works so well.
Yeah. It seems at first, just because of the design, it's weirdly adorable. But it's really dark.
Yeah. So what's your number 2?
Crosscode. I was so shocked this game turned out to be this good. It's one of those ones that kind of got stuck in development hell for who knows how long.
Yeah.
Like it was supposed to keep coming out, but then it faded from knowledge. Then it appeared again. I'm like, all right, I stopped following it a while ago, but then it finally came out and it's way better than I would have expected it to be. Like it's an action RPG with a lot of puzzle elements. Like most of you are like traveling from area to area. It's mostly just the combat, which is a lot of fun. Like it's very simple. Like you have an attack and you have a ranged attack and a shield and a dodge. at first, all right, those are your only 4 basic abilities. You get like some charged up abilities for it too. But then you can change your mode. Like you have your default mode, then you have one for 4 different elements. Depending on how you spend your points in each element, like it adjusts what stats are changed. So you can customize each element for stats and abilities, and you can just switch between them like at will. So very simple control scheme with a ridiculous amount that you can do with it.
This is one I was gonna check out if and when it ever makes its way to consoles. I know, because this was Indiegogo, right? Not Kickstarter, but crowdfunded on Indiegogo.
I don't remember. Like, I didn't hear about it till after the funding actually happened. I forget where they came from.
I just remember it came out and reviews on it were like user reviews and stuff were great. Like everyone seemed to love it. So that's one I'm just waiting for to inevitably hit consoles eventually.
Yeah,
because again, I'm on a Mac.
Yeah, but like with the actual story, the main plot has some problems, but the characters are really good and fun, so you can kind of overlook the main plot since that only gets focused on infrequently. But the whole idea is your character is an avatar in an MMO. Like basically people have been hooked up to these, will hook themselves up to a machine and control their character in a virtual reality setup.
So it's kind of like, I mean, obviously the plot's different, but it's kind of like the basic idea of Sword Art Online.
Kind of. Like, the weird thing is the avatar you're controlling exists in the real world. Like, there's this entire island that's been built. So a real person could travel to this island and interact with these avatars to an extent.
Okay. That's kind of neat.
Yeah, your character has amnesia in the beginning.
I
won't spoil what... It actually has a really interesting twist involving that I really liked.
Okay.
But I won't spoil that. But yeah, the game is funny. It's challenging. The puzzles get brutal by the end of it. Like, the only issue I have with the controls is when you're, like, targeting your ranged attack to deal with some of these puzzles, you have to be very precise. I tend to be a bit mobile sometimes when I'm playing games, so it's really easy to just, like, twitch off a little and fuck it up.
Yeah.
And that's frustrating. Otherwise, yeah, there's very little wrong I can say about this game. It's just fantastic.
Awesome. Yeah, it's like I said, it's one I'm looking forward to. It's just I have a Mac. It's shit. It can't play games.
Yeah, that kind of sucks. There's a lot of fun little indie games that show up sometimes.
Yeah. So my number 1 game is Darksiders 3, which has some technical problems that do hurt the experience a little bit, but this was another game I reviewed for nichegamer.com, and I did my review playthrough on Apocalyptic, which is the hardest difficulty setting, and I had a blast with it. It was one of those games where when you get through a really difficult area or fight like a really just difficult, challenging boss, it's one of those where like you just get that adrenaline rush that like, you know, you almost jump up and just like after you beat a boss that's been really hard that you've played a few times, you just get that feeling of just like jumping up in excitement. And so for just like all the good feelings the game gave me and just how like a lot of issues I had with a lot of games this year were just how easy a lot of games were. Like I was really down on Hitman 2 because of just they handed the solution, like even on the hardest difficulty setting in Hitman 2, the solutions to assassinations are just like handed to you. Like at one point in the game in Hitman 2, you need a code to a safe, and the code to the safe is literally one room over. There's just no challenge to it. And then with Red Dead, you had this enemy AI, everything was easy. And so to get a game like Darksiders that on its difficult setting was just a genuinely challenging game, I felt really accomplished and satisfied when I got through these tough areas, and so for that reason, it's my number one. I had an absolute blast playing through it.
See, I never gave Darksiders another chance after the first game, just because, like, it wasn't that it was a badly made game. I just felt like I was playing Zelda.
The weird thing about Darksiders is each game kind of clones another genre of sorts. So you had Darksiders that was like God of War meets Zelda. And then you had the second one that was very loot heavy. I don't want to say it's like Diablo-like, but it had elements it was very randomized loot. And then this third, Darksiders 3, has a lot of souls elements. Like if you die, you get a chance to go get like your dropped souls back. And so like one of the unique things, and I kind of find this a hook to this here, is actually I'm looking forward to see what they do with 4, because I'm hoping with 4 they'll like kind of mimic another genre, and just like each Horseman of the Apocalypse you play as has their own genre. But I kind of like that about the series.
See, I don't really mind games that borrow a lot and are clearly inspired by others. I just felt like I was playing Zelda the whole time I was playing the first Darksiders.
Yeah,
but I mean, they reskinned to Zelda. I'm like, well, it's fine, but I can just play Zelda.
But I'm rated Zelda. That's the hook.
So I just couldn't get interested. So I just didn't bother with the second and third one. Like I heard the second one was better.
Yeah. And
I didn't even know the third one came out until the last time you were on this show.
Yeah, and I'm one of the rare people that are going to be this high on the game. Like from mainstream reviews, a lot of people were low on it. Granted, a lot of critics didn't beat the game, and a lot complained that it was too hard, which is funny because it's easy and normal modes are very easy. It's not until you get into the challenging or apocalyptic difficulties that it actually amps up. But it did have technical issues, but they have since patched some of it. But just in a year where a lot of, like, even God of War, I found too easy. And so just...
Agreed on that one.
So just to get a game that was on its hardest setting was a genuinely challenging game. And it wasn't... A lot of games do hard modes where, like, the hardest difficulty feels cheap and bullshitty. Like, it just isn't fun to play. And this is a game that did its hardest difficulty really well, in that anytime I lost, most of the time it felt like it was my fault. Like I'd done a poorly timed dodge. And so it was a game that, to use the old, meme, I had to get good. I had to practice. I had to up my skills. I had to get my timings down. I had to pay attention to bosses' animations to like learn when I can get my attacks in, when I need to dodge, when I need to do dodge chains and just keep dodging. And it felt good to me when it just, to really make me like have to focus and practice, just it did a lot for me. And again, that feeling of when you beat a hard boss, like, and a lot of Dark Souls games are pretty easy to me now, because like once you've played a Souls games, like you kind of know how to play a Souls game. But like the first time I played Dark Souls or Bloodborne, that feeling you get upon beating a tough boss where you just celebrate, like that game did that to me. And so just, yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, I actually find, like, what is it? This coming year, all of the games I'm most excited for are basically Souls games of some form or another.
Tell me you're looking forward to Code Vein, because that is one I am so hyped for. Okay.
I wasn't sure at first, but when we actually started seeing more info, I'm like, all right, anime Dark Souls, I'm sold.
And then
I hope it does enough to separate itself, but yeah, anime Dark Souls sells me.
Pretty much. And then I'm guessing Sekiro is another one.
Sekiro.
Granted, that's not Souls-like. It is, but it's not.
I know they're saying that there's differences. Like, I trust that they're gonna do enough to separate it.
No, I've talked to somebody who loves the Souls games and has played it, and Sekiro, if it's all about breaking through an enemy's defenses. So like if you hit an enemy, if you break through their defenses and hit them, they die in one hit. So the game is very much about like they've made it difficult again by subverting how people play that type of game, because a lot of people are going to go in and see an enemy and just go in and try like mash, attack to like kill them, and you can't do that in this game. This one's built around being kind of patient, and so they've made it difficult. Like, it is Souls-like, but they've made it difficult by subverting how people play.
Yeah, I was hoping they do something like that. Keep the formula fresh and all that. But at the heart, it does feel like it would belong just in that same category.
Yeah, it does. At the end of the day, it does.
But yeah, there's that. There's Ghost of Tsurumu. It's Ghost of something.
Ghost of Tsushima.
Yes.
I don't know if that one's quite Souls-like. I think that's more just action with swords. But I don't think that's going to be 2019.
It's possible it won't be. I hope it is.
It looked, oh my god, it looked so stunning.
And what was the other one? Nioh 2.
I'm iffy about. I played the first Nioh. I actually have the platinum in it. Like, I played a lot of Nioh, and I have a lot of mixed feelings on it. Like, I think they did the combat really well, but like the lack of enemy variety just got so dull to me. So I'm not hyped for Nioh 2. I'll get it, but I'm kind of keeping I'm kind of just, keeping my expectations in check.
Yeah, like, I did really like the first one. Did have some problems. I didn't think it was as good as the Souls games, but it did enough to keep itself separate.
Mm-hmm.
While still clearly having an inspiration from Souls. I'm like, yeah, I'll buy Nioh 2.
You know what we need to do in the future now?
What?
Because we keep talking about future games, let's do a whole stream dedicated to like our expectations of 2019.
Oh god, I hope I'm not let down by this.
No,
but yes, I think we should probably get to my number one.
Yeah, yep. What's your number one?
My number one was Octopath Traveler. Like, this is a great.
That's a surprising one.
Like, for me, this is a great example of a game that shines despite having some pretty big flaws to it. Like, it's not like with Dragon Quest XI where I'm like mostly shitting on it but still manage to like it, because there are some fundamental flaws with Octopath Traveler. A big one being, like, you have all 8 characters that you eventually get. One of them does not feel like he belongs here. Like, he's a thief. All of his story missions involve him sneaking into places to steal shit. He's a loner. Why is he bringing the Loud Knight with a giant sword on a stealth mission?
Yeah.
Why is he even in a group? It makes no sense for him to be here.
No.
At all.
Isn't one other issue with the game too that the stories don't quite intersect as well as they could have?
Yes. Like, each individual story, I think, is a bit too short.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's so much more you could have done with each individual. But at the same time, there's still some interesting stories there. They do kind of tie it all together with, like, the 9th chapter. I don't think I'm really spoiling anything by saying you beat everyone's story, a 9th chapter unlocks. I think that's just kind of expected. If that didn't happen, everyone would be disappointed.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it does kind of tie them all together. It doesn't do the best of jobs.
Okay, be honest. Did you beat the overly challenging final boss rush of sorts at the game?
It wasn't challenging. Like, the rush part wasn't. The
Really?
last guy was. Like, the rush part, it was so easy to keep my health up.
All I've heard about, because I haven't played Octopath because I don't play Switch really, but all I've heard from like anybody is just how difficult that final boss rush and the boss at the end was. So it wasn't that bad to you?
Like, the rush itself was almost trivial.
Okay.
The actual final boss, when you face him, like, it's easy to get to him at full health and SP and all that.
Yeah.
So the rush itself, I felt, was just a trivial waste of time.
Yeah, but like
the boss itself was pretty brutal.
Yeah, and then but I think that's what people mean when they say the rush,
Yeah.
because like when you die, you have to replay them all again before you can get back to them, right? Okay.
Yeah, it's just too time consuming.
Yeah. But
Just
you
because,
did beat it.
again, yeah. Now, there's one trick that kind of makes this game really easy once you realize it, is you get passive abilities off certain classes. Like, because you can add a secondary class to everybody,
Yeah.
and the passive abilities you can keep and equip, even after switching a class off. But there's one that at first I completely overlooked.
Did we lose you? Hello? Hey. Hello?
Okay, my thing disconnected on me there.
Oh, okay.
What was the last thing you heard?
You were talking about passive abilities,
Okay.
and yeah.
All right, so there's one that it's generally an ability I overlook in most games because it's typically not all that useful. Is when it just says when you're healed, it'll heal you over your max. You know, I figured upper limit on abilities like this, but how it works is once you're healed, like your HP bar is a certain color once you go over. Once you're over, you can't heal any higher. But whatever you heal up to is where your health goes to. Meaning, if you open the battle, just like use one person's boost charges or whatever they start with to do a group heal, everybody in the party is a tank.
Oh, that's
It is ridiculously powerful.
Yeah, I can see how that would be. Do you think they intended it like that, or was it more of an exploit of sorts, or?
I don't know. I don't think they realized it was that good.
Yeah.
Especially, like, just give that ability to everyone, which isn't too hard to do for endgame or at certain points. So everybody in your party is a tank now.
That works well.
It makes so many fights trivial.
You need that stealth, that thief tank.
But yeah, it's such a good game. Like, the best part of the characters is depending on who you bring along on the missions, you get like little story or dialogue bits between the characters. And some of them are so good. Like, they clearly knew how to write a group of people who felt like an actual team.
Yeah. I
just wish that bled more into the actual chapter and story progression rather than just those little scenes that come up.
Well, there's definitely going to be a sequel with how well it did, so...
Oh, I hope so.
That was one of the biggest complaints. So I imagine, though, they will take that feedback and make it more weaved together in the future.
Yeah. Like, what is it? Like, my favorite character of the game, or my favorite two, were Primrose, who is basically this, like, nobleman's daughter, but her dad was killed by some secret cabal of people. And she's basically become an assassin to hunt them down for revenge.
Yeah.
And the other is Hannet, like a huntress, just on the hunt for this legendary beast that turned her master to stone and all that. Now, I always brought those two together just because at first they were my favorites. But the dialogue they have together is like the best in the game because Primrose does like a lot of the seduction type of thing to work her way into situations. But there are so many times she's like legit trying to flirt with Hannet. But despite all of her skills and abilities, she's just failing so hard. And it feels so like sincere. It's just adorable the whole time. I loved it. But I just wish that those stories would blend together better. And that there is a more cohesion to the teamwork elements of it in the narrative.
I definitely think you'll get that in the sequel. So if you're this high up on this one, I think you probably have a treat coming in the future.
I do hope, because again, like, RPGs have always been my favorite genre.
Yeah.
And this game was developed by Tokyo RPG Factory.
Yeah.
Like, the first game they released was I Am Setsuna.
I remember that one.
I
People love that one.
I did not. Like, it was all there. The talent was clearly there. Just the game didn't quite click. Like, it had a great premise for the battle system. Like, it basically lifted Chrono Trigger's dual techs, which, great idea. But they unlock so slowly at first that you never really get to use the system. And then when they start unlocking, you get just so many at once. And so many of them just aren't good that the system just kind of goes to waste.
Yeah, I can understand that.
That was really the problem, is they had all these great ideas, but they just couldn't quite implement any of them right. So I wanted to like it, but it just let me down so badly.
Well, it seems like they hit the ball out of the park with Octopath, so...
Yeah, I was hoping that would happen, but I wasn't sure if that was going to like be a continued trend of the studio, or if they could kind of pull it together after I Am Setsuna, which they did wonderfully.
Awesome. So, to the opposite of wonderful,
God, I've only got 9 games on this one.
I have 5. Because there was games I was down on, but I didn't want to put them as like the worst. Like, so I only have 5. So why don't you blow through your first 4, and then we'll be on par.
See, we talked about this one at great length last time.
No, okay, save this one because this is one of mine.
Number 9. Okay, I'll skip the number 9. Like my number 8.
Does it involve an American city?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
We'll get to it in a bit then. But yeah, my number 8. Again, this was the last one we talked about, with Spyro Reignited.
Yeah.
This is kind of mostly on this list, just almost by default. Like other years, this wouldn't make my worst list, but I only had 9 games I could actually walk away saying I just didn't like.
See, I had fun with it. It wasn't enough to be on my game of the years, obviously, but I did enjoy it. I had just a genuinely enjoyable time with Spyro for what it was.
Yeah. After that was Kirby Superstar Allies.
Oh yeah, people hated that one.
See, it's another one. It had all of the right elements from Kirby Superstar. It just didn't seem to understand why they worked in the first place.
Yeah.
So we just got a bit of a mess.
Yep.
And my number 6 is Valtharian Arc Hero School, which is somehow a mobile game that never got released as a mobile game.
Yeah, I think that was that the one because before we ever did our first stream together, you sent me a link when you asked me to be on with you. I think you had sent me a link, wasn't it, talking about that game?
I believe it was.
Yeah. That game just sounded fucking... It was, if I recall, like, the biggest complaint was wasn't it just, like, the story was very boring? Like, you guys were like, it's so boring, what else do you say about it? I don't remember anything.
I legit don't remember anything that happened in the plot.
Yeah.
He didn't really either. And the management and combat elements were so basic that they're not really worth talking about either. I don't know how that stream went on for so long.
Yeah. I'm surprised it didn't get more derailed, because like when we did the Spyro one, we talked about Spyro for like 10 minutes and we're like, oh, nothing else to say about that. So
I think it was the 20-minute point where just there was no more Spyro talk left.
But then we were able to talk about our mutual worst, one of our worst games of the year, and that is Detroit Become Human.
Is that your number 5?
Or
is that higher
up? I put it as... Actually, no. Actually, my number 5 is technically Spider-Man, but that's just... I almost feel like that's unfair to be on here in some ways, but I was so... I think there's a lot Spider-Man did right, as I said, but it was just... Those open world activities were miserable. I think the mission structure was super dated. And I think, like, I'm sick of games coming out that are, like, technically amazing, but where the gameplay just doesn't hold up. And so I've been starting to be like more harsh on games that are like technically amazing, but if the gameplay's lacking, the gameplay's lacking and it stops being fun.
Yeah.
So actually my number 5 was actually Spider-Man. I kind of jumped the gun on Detroit, but yeah.
Yeah, my number 5 was Ni no Kuni 2.
Oh, I haven't played that, but I've been thinking it's one my partner would enjoy, so I've actually been trying to convince her to buy it.
There are a
Maybe
lot
that's
of
a bad
people
idea.
that like this game. I see why, like,
All I know is I love the idea of you're playing as the president of the United States when a nuke goes off and you wake up in a magical kingdom with a fucking gun. Like,
okay, that intro got me like, all right, I want to see where this goes. Yeah, he's not the main character.
yeah, because he actually becomes, if what I heard from a podcast is correct, he becomes someone you can just shoot, a party member, and you don't even have to bring him with you.
He's basically your strategist, and
Yeah.
that's the extent of his role in the game.
Well, he can't be a good strategist if he let the United States get nuked.
All right. Here's the issue with the story of Ni no Kuni is, like, it has kind of like that adorable charm to the graphics and all that, but it's still trying to build a story that you're going to take seriously. There's things that make this hard. Specifically, your kingdom needs a financial advisor. The guy you decide to make your financial advisor, you had to help him get his kingdom back because he lost it on a rigged bet.
Okay. Nothing like losing a kingdom on a bet.
He should be in charge of our finances. That is specifically his role. That's the story of your kingdom building ability.
Yeah.
Don't know how to better describe than that.
Fair enough. So
gameplay is fine. Pretty simple.
Wasn't it
not too challenging?
If I recall, when it came out, a lot of people it was too easy. Like, yeah. So they ended up patching in eventually a harder mode later on.
I never played that.
Yeah.
Like, I played through when it first came out. It's one of those combats, like, it's just enough to kind of make you think.
Yeah.
That's all I really ask for. Just make me think. And it did that fine. It gets way too repetitive, though. With, like, all the side stuff you do, the combat. I was kind of sad because I was in the same mode with the first Ni no Kuni. Is there some good premises there? It's got that visual charm. It does really well. But it just didn't have anything to back that up. A lot of people did like this game, but I couldn't do it.
Yeah. Totally understandable.
I realize this is what a lot of people didn't keep talking about, like, after it came out. So I wonder if people kind of looked back like, maybe that wasn't as good. Maybe I was just happy for an RPG.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the theme of the year. People were just happy for any RPG, which is kind of why I think Dragon Quest XI got so well reviewed.
Yeah.
We had, what, this year? That and Octopath. It's a terrible year for the JRPG.
Not a great year for just RPGs in general, even Western ones. So, on to number 4. And for me, finally, Detroit. Fuck that game. Detroit is just... There's aspects of it I enjoyed. Like, it's so corny. Its plot is hilarious. Like, there are moments in the story I just genuinely laughed out loud because it was so, like, it was just corny. Like, David Cage is a bad writer, and I found it hilarious. Like, it was just funny to me. But the gameplay
struggled between putting that on my worst list or my best list.
Yeah, it just, for me, it became too much of a tedious chore to get from each story beat to the next because, like, I actually enjoyed the first 2 to 3 hours of the game. Like, I didn't mind, and we talked about this on the last stream, but I didn't mind when you're playing as Kira and you're, like, cleaning the house because it's setting up who she is. It's immersive for she's still that android, and it made sense.
but you
But
keep
then
doing
but
that.
then each mission plays out the same of just doing like the same tedious tasks, and it just got dull. Exploring every like little environmental area just stopped being fun, and just the gameplay itself, like it just, yeah, didn't do anything for me. But at least I got some laughs
Yeah.
because it's hilariously bad writing.
See,
Like this one last thing, this still bugs me. So all androids have this thing on their head to designate that they're androids, the blue and red light.
can just pull it off.
But they can, yeah, they can just pull it off and then heal fake skin over it. So like, why was that coded into them? That's the one thing that lets you know these are androids, and like whoever designed them gave this magic heal ability to take that off. It's so goofy.
I will stand by this statement. There are few game directors out there with the ability to create an atmosphere like David Cage has.
Yeah.
Problem is the games are written by David Cage and he doesn't understand how people work.
He doesn't understand how stories work.
I still think he just doesn't understand how people work. I think
Yeah.
that's where the problem comes from. If he understood how people worked, so many problems in these games would be fixed.
He can understand the emotions of a polygon, but not the emotions of a real human.
Yeah. I struggle with David Cage.
I
still love Heavy Rain. This is despite the really awkward QuickTime event sex scene.
I didn't like Heavy Rain. There's no David Cage game I've played yet that I've enjoyed, so I kind of went into Detroit not expecting to like it. And I think I said this last time and I'll say it again. The best David Cage game is a game he had no hand in, and that's Until Dawn. Like, so it's not that I hate the genre, because I can enjoy those like story-based, choose your own adventure kind of games. I just don't think David Cage does them well.
I struggle. It's like he is actively trying to make me hate his games.
Yeah.
But I don't want to hate his games.
See, I no longer see his games as games, but as like PlayStation tech demos for like, I'm pretty sure he's just being paid to make tech for like facial animation capture in pretty environments. And they just decided to sell demos to us at full price. Like he's just making tech demos and jamming a story into it.
It's possible. But yes, my number 4 is Shalnor Legends before we go off on Detroit is for a second time.
What game is it?
Shalnor Legends Sacred Lands.
I do not know what that is. I'm not even gonna pretend to know.
Nobody does. Well, I wouldn't say nobody. It's not that well known of a game. It's another kind of Zelda clone, kind of like Shotgun Legend was. The difference here is it is something in my review, like I didn't know if there was a name for this. I call it the trick puzzle. It is set up to look like it is a puzzle, but it isn't. Because you're not actually having to think about how to solve it. It just kind of solves itself. It is tricking you into think you are doing a puzzle.
And so it just feels like a waste of time at the end.
Like, the best examples is the game uses like the same type of puzzle multiple times. There's one where basically you gotta like push around pillars and like push them onto the matching colored plate. Like, these are puzzles that have existed before. You can make them interesting. None of them did I even have to think. I'm like, I can just push it there. There's really no trick to getting it there. I might have to push one of the others out of the way temporarily. But there's no real clever trick to doing this. You just push them there.
So you're just it felt like padding. You're just pushing shit for a while.
Is kind of how almost every puzzle in the game feels.
Yeah, that would get...
Bosses are basically just reskins outside of one of them. Like, they look vastly different, but they're basically doing the same thing every time.
Yeah.
Again, it had a lot of good elements to it. If just the enemy and puzzle design were decent, this could have been a good game.
Mm-hmm.
but just nothing really worked.
Yeah.
It was frustrating because I kind of wanted to like it because I like these little indie games with their own take on like those old school formulas.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of sad when it just fails this horribly.
Yeah, and it's always disappointing when like you want to love something and you're just unable to.
Yeah, there's not really much to say past that on that game. It's just a retro indie game that didn't really understand how it worked.
Yeah. So on to number 3.
Yep.
Mine is Vampire.
I know that game exists.
Yeah, it's one I was actually kind of hyped for. I really liked the idea of like they were kind of like trying to sell it on, but the combat wasn't very good. And it's actually one of the games where one of their sins is that they actually put in too much combat. And so it just became annoying. Like there's no fast travel, so anytime you're running through the world, it just got to the point where I just start running past enemies because I didn't want to engage them anymore because I was just bored of it because the combat wasn't very fun. And there's a clunkiness to it. And one of the core selling points was that there's these different districts or boroughs or whatever, and you're a vampire and you can like hypnotize them or whatever it's called, their vampire ability, and you can like get information and suck their blood, and like if you suck blood you get more powerful. It's like the game's easy and hard modes are based off whether you want to suck blood or not. Like so the more blood you suck and the more people you kill, the worse story you're going to get, but the game's going to be super easy. And then like my first playthrough I didn't kill anybody, and that's like it's hard mode, but with the clunky combat it just wasn't like a fun type of challenging. It was just kind of like boring. But anyways, like this idea of like you can kill off all these people in the district, but once you kill off too many people, people will start hiding and like the district will shut down and like you can't redeem it. And so it sounded really cool in its concept. But so like on my second playthrough of the game, I did a run where I was just killing people just to see how it played. And none of the other districts will react to one district. So it's supposed to be this like interconnected world, but like people living in one district, like just a street away, won't realize everyone's been killed in another. So it's like the world's not as reactive as I wanted it to be. And then the story, like I was really hooked on the story for the first like hour or two. Like it really starts off on an interesting hook, and its use of music was good for a bit. And then the story just kind of got a bit dull, and then it had some of like your typical vampire cliche trope story beats, and the characters stopped being as interesting, and so it just kind of fell apart. It could have been redeemed if the combat was a bit better, but it just wasn't fun to play. It was clunky, and then it had a ton of technical issues. So like the whole world's connected, and it's one like you could go 10 feet in one direction and get a loading screen, only to like take a turn and go down like another 5 seconds to get another loading screen. And so like with no fast travel, you're constantly running through like the world, and you could get like 3 loading screens in the period of like 15-20 seconds. And on a technical level, that just got really annoying when you're just trying to get somewhere to do like some story stuff.
Yeah, I do remember hearing about a lot of people having some weird issues like that, a few bugs with the gameplay that kind of made it frustrating.
Yeah, and it had like a weapon upgrade system that like could have been cool, but it just so much of the game just yeah, it was definitely a budgeted title, but like none of its core elements really came together in like a satisfying way. And but it's another one of those games I platted because I do that. Like when I play a game, I try like I'm like a completionist, and just none of the various playthroughs I did were very memorable or fun. I just got so tired of it.
Yeah, I've had games like that in the past. There's just a few problems in there that are bad enough in a way that stops anything from being enjoyable.
And I think what really sucks is it had ideas I really liked. Like the idea of like everyone in like this like little society, like the boroughs have like different rankings. And if you kill off the highest ranking person, that like area is going to fall apart and people will stop trusting anybody, and then they're going to start hiding, and like you won't be able to like interact with them or get their blood anymore. And if you want to level up, do you just kill this like lowly homeless guy no one's gonna miss, or do you go for like the max points and kill like the head of the borough, but then you're never gonna get to talk to these people again? And so like on paper that's a cool idea, but it was just so, once you get into it, it's very paper thin, and I don't think it had the effect it could have been. And that was what was most disappointing, is like I would love to see this idea redone by like a studio with a bit more resources to fully make it work.
That's understandable. Let's see. Number 3 then on my list was Dynasty Warriors 9.
Oh god, yeah. That's understandable.
See, this isn't even because of like the actual problems with the gameplay, which there were quite a few, don't get me wrong. The problem is this is not a Dynasty Warriors game. Like, you play Dynasty Warriors, taking control of a general in these giant epic battles. I'm playing Dynasty Warriors 9, and I am collecting wolf pelts and rocks.
Exciting.
And this, when you actually go to the epic battles, like I like that it just transitions direct. Like it's still on the same overworld map you're wandering around on. So it's not like some weird instance dungeon that pops up. It's the actual locations you're fighting in, which it's like, all right, that's pretty cool. But really, resource points no longer matter. Like your offense or defense points that you could capture, like drained all of the tactical nature out of playing Dynasty Warriors. And most of the time, you're just doing all this mindless gathering and crafting, and it's not Dynasty Warriors anymore.
No.
I wanted to just take Zhang Liao and just start murdering people with either a spear or 2 swords en masse.
See, I'm not a fan of the Dynasty Warrior game, so this one could have been good and I still wouldn't have liked it. But from what I've heard people say of people who do like the series, I've only heard people just, like people who enjoyed the series just hating this one and everything they did.
Again, it's not an entirely terrible game. The crafting is fine, the exploration is fine. Like, if this was just some random open world game someone released one day, I'd be like, that's okay, I can enjoy this. It probably wouldn't make my top 10 list or anything, but it's not Dynasty Warriors.
Yeah.
And that saddened me. Like, I know this is a very niche kind of series. These have never been the deepest games. But it has its place.
That's kind of weirdly how I felt about slightly different, but like Metal Gear Solid is my all-time favorite video game series. Like I'm a huge Metal Gear fan, but I didn't really like Metal Gear Solid 5 because it wasn't, as a fan of the series, it wasn't a Metal Gear game. To me, it didn't. And so like it was a good game, but it wasn't a Metal Gear game. So I was a bit lower on it for that. And so kind of similar how you described this, like to you, it wasn't a Dynasty Warriors game. So you're kind of looking down on it, but like had it not been, it could have been viewed better. Like Metal Gear Solid 5 is a well-made game. It's fun, but it's not a Metal Gear game. So I was really like down on it because of that.
And see, I can never get into the Metal Gear games. Like I feel I should. There's no reason I shouldn't like those games, but just nothing.
Oh, it's my favorite. It's my all-time favorite. Like, I am a huge Hideo Kojima fangirl. Like, for Christmas, I even got a Ludens. Kojima Productions has their mascot called Ludens. From the Kojima Productions store, I even got like my own little Ludens statue to keep on my desk. It's cool.
Nice.
But anyways, continuing on with our
to number
2. Number 2, The Quiet Man.
Okay, I don't know why that's a bad game, but nobody likes The Quiet Man.
Oh, it is. It's not just a bad game. It is just it's just a bad everything. So, this is another game I reviewed for Niche Gamer. I gave it a 2 out of 10. It's just broken. Its combat is disastrous. Its gameplay is clunky, broken. Hit detection is a mess. Environmental detection is a mess. People will just like, they're supposed to open doors and walk into rooms in combat, and they'll just walk through a closed door and just materialize. Sometimes they'll just pop into place. So, like, on a technical level, the gameplay is a disaster. But what really makes this game just, I'm just, it's a mess. It is a disaster of a game. So, what hurts it is there's more cutscenes in the game than there is gameplay. It's like a 2 to 3 hour game, probably about 3 hours, and 2 hours of it has to be cutscenes. And what happens is, and this is so laughably bad, the cutscenes don't have sound. Nothing in the game has sound because your character is deaf. So you're getting, at one point, there's a 15-minute cutscene that goes back and forth between real, or goes back and forth between live action and in-game rendering. And so you're getting like a 5 to 10-minute live action cutscene that's just people sitting down and talking, but you can't hear them.
That's amazing.
But you can't hear them. And the camera cuts away at times too, so you can't even, like, even if you can read lips, you can't do it. And the worst part is you're playing as a deaf character, but your character in the game talks, so your character can understand what they're saying, but you as the player can't. And so you're just getting 15-minute cutscenes of silent talking, and they're not cutscenes with action or fighting, though there's a few. But I mean, it's 15 minutes of people just sitting and talking. At one point, there's just two people in the back of a car talking to each other, and you can't understand what they're saying. And so, like, it's a 3-hour game where 2 hours of the game is just quiet cutscenes, and it's awful. It's so bad. And what happens is, I played it for review, so when I beat my playthrough of the game, there was a countdown timer at the end that was, I think, about like 6 days or something. And it's like, coming in 6 days is a countdown timer to something called answers. And so what they did was they put in a patch where on your second playthrough of the game, they added audio dialogue. So you can all the cutscenes are now voiced, so you can get the story on your second playthrough, but you can't do it on the first. And the game is not worth playing through the first time for quiet cutscenes, just to play it again for the dialogue-driven ones.
Okay, I remember seeing someone on Twitter, I think it was Dragnix, just said, you would think the story would be better and make more sense with audio. You would be wrong.
Yeah. And it's a disaster of a game. And then even like when you're fighting, the fighting is broken and clunky. The whole, like, it is such a shit game that it's so bad.
Did they revive Andy Kaufman to direct this game?
No. But I think it was done by Human Head Studios, and just, ooh, it's bad. Square Enix had a bad year.
They gave me Octopath.
Yeah, fair enough.
Dragon Quest was good.
Wait, what? I don't think, was Square Enix Dragon Quest?
Yeah. Enix was originally Dragon Quest, so they're all the Dragon Quests.
I didn't actually realize that.
Yeah. Yeah, Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy, all from the same people now.
Okay, because, yeah. Oh, fair enough. All right,
I think 8 was when Dragon Quest 8, I think, is when them and Square merged.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
So, what is your number 2 worst game?
Little Dragon's Cafe. Yeah. I'm kind of thankful for this game, actually, because there was something I've always had trouble writing a review for, and that's the Harvest Moon or Story of Seasons games.
Yeah.
Because how do you write a review that makes a game that's a farming simulator sound fun?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got a new kind of turnip you can grow.
Yeah.
But this game, it made me realize why those games are so good and fun, because you're actually working towards something.
Yeah.
Even outside of the story, just there's stuff you're working towards. You're building a home, a family, you're expanding your farm. It all sounds silly, but it's a goal you're working towards. You don't have to. Is I just want to do this because I want a nicer house.
Yeah.
None of that you get in this game.
No, everything I've seen of it, it just looked dreadfully dull.
Like, you can get more customers to come in, but you're not actually making any money.
Ooh.
Which is really weird to say, that money is not a part of a game where you're running a cafe.
Cafe. Yeah.
Like, ingredients eventually start auto-spawning to a degree. Like, you find them out in the open world, which is an easy enough task. But anything you find has a chance to start spawning in your gardens and your fish holes, so you're not really doing anything to get your material.
Mm-mm.
You're not growing, you're not really putting in any effort to get to anything, and the story is almost superfluous to anything you're actually doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even the goal and aspect of building up this cafe doesn't really seem to have anything to do with the premise of raising this dragon so you can wake up your mother because she's in a coma for something dragon related. I don't remember.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like a game very memorable.
No, but I'm happy because I can now explain why Harvest Moon and Story of Seasons were fun.
Fair enough. So I'm gonna mix it up. You do your number one first.
All right. My number one. I feel kind of bad here because I'm picking on a game that this really is a game that no one seems to have heard of. Like, I could not find any reviews of it on any kind of site except for the Steam reviews.
Mm-hmm.
It's Keats the Lonely Bird. Now,
Yep. Don't know what that is.
Nobody does. There's a reason for it. All right. I could just go on, like, in terms of, like, it's a side scroller. Now, the gameplay, it's kind of bland, but there's a lot of instant death traps, and this is not the most stable of games. Like, I've been stuck on walls, couldn't move, so just stupid glitches and bugs will get you killed beyond your control.
Yeah,
Even if it was engaging gameplay, that would kill this dead.
Yeah, I was playing Death's Gambit last week, which isn't a game bad enough to be in my worst games, but it had technical issues where, like, there was countless times I would get stuck in the map on, like, the side walls and then just get killed.
But there's some, like, that alone I don't think would have made it worse than some of these others. But it's one of those games, like, imagine taking all of the preachiness of a David Cage game, but without his ability to make an atmosphere and without it being just comically hilarious.
Oh, okay. That sounds bad. There's really nothing more to be said. Like, you just explained why this is the worst game.
It's like David Cage wrote it without any of his redeemable features.
You know, is this going to become a trend where every time we do a stream, we're just going to go into a thing about, like, why David Cage is awful?
I don't know. But just this game. Like, I did not beat this game because of the glitches. Like, theoretically, it could be done. But it was happening so often. It's like, no, there's no reason to keep playing this game. If it's just going to keep locking me and shit and killing me,
yeah,
a game that should probably be like 4 to 5 hours to beat is going to take me weeks. So this game I did not beat before reviewing.
That's understandable.
That was too much.
Yeah, that sounds really bad.
It is. But I feel bad because there's probably going to be more people hearing about this game that eventually watch one of these clips than have actually played this game.
Yeah.
But it's just that bad. Like, I didn't play Fallout 76, so
no, I
didn't make my list at all, but it might have.
I played like 2 hours of the beta and was like, yeah, this isn't for me. And then, yeah, so I haven't. Had I played Fallout 76 at release, there's no doubt that would be in my worst, but that's why it's not on mine.
But all right, so what is your number one?
Ooh, my number one is the most hated game I have played all generation, and that is Just Cause 4. I played that for review for Niche Gamer, and I hate this fucking game. Like, I so I gave it a 4 out of 10. Quiet Man got a lower score, but Quiet Man made me laugh at how bad it was. Just Cause 4 is so bad, it's just I hated it. So, one, it is a technical and janky mess. There's glitches galore. But also, the game on the PS4 has a motion blur so bad, it was making me nauseous playing it. And I was like, is it just me? So, this is when I was still at Niche Gamer. So, Rory Hutchings, also known as Buttermancer Online, he redboxed a version to play on his own PlayStation 4. He redboxed it. The motion blur in the game was so bad, he literally threw up from it. He got nauseous and threw up. So I was like, so that was, he threw up. I'm getting not dizzy by this game. So then I decided to upload a clip onto Twitter and I was like, legit question, is anyone getting dizzy watching this? And I got like 30 plus people replying, just being like, oh, that made me dizzy. It's like, I'm not even playing the game and just watching that 10-second clip made me dizzy. So it's a disaster to play. It is not fun. But then eventually I got acclimated to it because when I review games, I'm a very thorough reviewer. So even for my review in a game making me sick, I put in over 60 hours into it and platted the game. So I did everything this game has to offer. And there's 400, I think it was 426 total quote unquote challenges in the game, broken into wingsuit, speed challenge, and stunt challenge. And I use stunt very lightly. So there's 426 combined of these. I think like the wingsuit ones, there's like 124 wingsuit challenges. And in Just Cause 3, there's wingsuit challenges where like you have like a strict time limit to get through like sometimes between like 10 to 30 rings. This game has 124 of these or whatever. And you just have to go through 3 rings that are really close to each other and there's no challenge or skill involved. So there's just 124 of these like things that are complete padding where you just go through 3 rings often close together. There's one where I was given 30 seconds and I beat it with 19 seconds to spare. It's just a waste of time. And then there's these things called stunts in the game, which again is open world padding. And this is almost all the open world activities there are. And the stunts involve you have to drive a specific vehicle into a ring. Okay? The vehicles you need are often within eye line of the ring you need to drive it through, like often like 10 feet away or less. Like it's so bad, I'll send you a video on Twitter after this. And there's 120 something of these. And often you don't have to go off a jump. It's you just literally get in the vehicle, drive the 5 to 10 feet into the ring, and it'll just award you a stunt challenge. So it's just, and again, there's over 120 of these. So it's just like the worst open world padding you could ever believe. There's 426 of these things combined that are no challenge, and they're just there. Like it's literally get into a car, drive it 10 feet, and you've gotten your stunt challenge. And it's just the open world padding. And then the mission structure is some of the worst, most dated mission structure you will ever play. I hope you like hacking shit or defending people as they hack stuff. Because for a game built around destruction, the missions all devolve into hack. And where you just get swarmed by waves of enemies and you don't have time to like use your like cool tools of destruction. So it just breaks into like shooting people. So you have all these cool like gadgets on your grappling hook and all these grappling hook mods, but the game's mission structure isn't based around using them. And often it was just, you just use a gun just to get through it. And all the missions are just hack stuff. And the open world missions you do are just the same. And it's such a poorly designed game on a technical level. Again, it made someone at Niche Gamer puke while playing it. And then just those open world activities. And it was just, those 60 hours of my life playing it were the worst experience I've had playing a game. And I don't know how long. Like, it is the worst game I've played of the generation. I fucking hate Just Cause 4 with a passion.
That's a big drop in quality from what people were saying from like the last couple, because I know people love Just Cause 2.
Yeah, Just Cause 2 was like the best of the series. And then Just Cause 3 I didn't like very much, but it had a few things that were okay. But this game is just it's a disaster. Like I said, I'll send you like one thing Just Cause 3 had were like those challenges scattered throughout the map, but there wasn't a ton of them. Like there was a lot, but it wasn't like 400 of them, but you'd actually had to like do challenges and skill stuff. And this like to literally like you literally get in a car, drive it 10 feet, and that's your quote unquote stunt challenge complete. Times that 120 times. And it's like it's just the worst padding. And in a year where I'm sick of just bad open world padding, cough, Spider-Man, cough. It's yeah, just yeah. And again, the whole week was just me being dizzy. I would have to take long breaks from playing Just Cause 4 because the motion blur, it's the worst motion blur you've ever seen. And at the time, I've read that there's since patched in an option to turn motion blur off. But in my version of the game that I played after it released, there was no options to turn off motion blur. In fact, there was no video options in the entire game. You couldn't even adjust the brightness. And so it was that bare bones in its setting. And like a lot of reviewers gave it like 7s and shit. But when my review went up, afterwards I checked Steam, and Steam user reviews were 33%. Like it had a 33% rating. That's how bad it was. And so people who've played it do not like this game either. It's bad. Like I said, I'll send you a clip on Twitter later. And if anyone ever wants to see the clip who's listening to this, go to my Twitter. It's Sofnar0747 and just use the search function and look up Just Cause 4. And you'll find like 10 videos that show why this game is fucking awful. It's so bad.
Yeah, I've not heard anything good really about that game.
So
a lot of people I haven't seen talk about it, but I don't think any of them made it past the motion blur.
No. And again, it's not just my worst game of the year, it's my worst game of the generation. Because again, Quiet Man may be lower in score, but Quiet Man was so bad I could laugh at it. Just Cause 4 is just so bad I was just angry. I hated this fucking game. So yeah, that's Just Cause 4, everybody.
I don't even know what my worst of this generation would be.
We'll save that podcast for when the new consoles come out.
I'd have to actually think back on just what I played that was that bad. It might Keats might actually be up there. That game would be a contender.
So yeah, that was our 2018 in gaming.
I was so disappointed.
That's yeah, if I had to come up with one word to sum up this year for me, that's what it was disappointing. Because like again, there was games like God of War that were not bad enough to be on my bottom and not good enough to be it, but it was like I was just so disappointed in most of the games I played where like and it's weird because a lot of people are high on a ton of these games, but like I just played them and I'm like, it's fine. It's okay.
Like what? I compared this to what I had last year. Like, let's see. My number 10 game last year was Xenoblade Chronicles 2.
Mm-hmm.
A game that got cut from my list last year was Super Mario Odyssey. It's a great game.
Yeah.
Yes, I had to make a choice to cut Super Mario Odyssey.
Yeah. I don't have a list of last year in front of me, but if I was off the top of my head, my number 1 game of last year, I think, was Nier Automata.
That one I am in agreement with you on.
I loved Nier, and then I was big on Horizon Zero Dawn. I really enjoyed Prey.
Horizon bored the shit out of me.
I had a lot of fun with that one. It's weird. People seem to either really love it or really hate it.
I don't hate it. I was just bored.
Yeah.
But no, like my top 3 was number 1 was Nier Automata. Number 2 I had Persona 5.
Oh, I hated Persona, and I know that's like fighting words, but I hated Persona. I did beat it too. I beat that game. I hated it though.
Like I don't like it as much as I liked 3 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
But I still really like Persona 5. Yeah, number 3 was Story of Seasons, Trios of Towns. Like, even below that, I had Blue Reflection, which was Magical Girl, the RPG. There's no other way to describe that one.
Mm-hmm.
South Park was on my list. A Hat in Time.
Oh, see, I didn't like South Park either. And that was, I didn't think the jokes were as good as the first game, and they kind of just kept reusing the same one to the point it just wasn't funny. It was like one of those bad episodes of South Park. But my big issue was from the hero powers and the little cut scenes you had to watch every time you had to use your hero power. And towards the end of the game, they would put like 4 obstacles in a row where like you needed to use your power to use your power to use your power to use your power. So you're just sitting there through all these annoying cut scenes you've seen a million times, and I just got so worn out by that.
Yeah, I can understand that. But I'm just saying, like, we're seeing all these games, even like Knights of Azure 2, Neo, Breath of the Wild. These are the games that made up last year's top 10.
Yeah.
I look at that, then I look at this year. I don't see a comparison. Most of those games I wouldn't have considered when compared to these releases.
Yeah. And it's kind of one of those weird years where I don't know how much people are going to agree with us, because so many people are going to place like Spider-Man and God of War and Red Dead Redemption 2 and all these other games on a pedestal, and a lot of them are just kind of okay.
See, I still think with Dragon Quest XI, here in about 2-3 more years, people aren't going to look back on it as this perfect 10 out of 10 game.
No.
I think it got such good reviews and praise because this was just a weak year for RPGs.
Yeah.
And if you like the JRPG genre at all, you had that. You had a couple remakes, and you had Octopath. There was nothing.
Yeah.
Like, Digimon Cyber Sleuth made my list. That was, again, it's just Cyber Sleuth from the previous year with almost nothing changed.
Yeah.
They even used the same graphics, art design. It's all the same models.
That's how I feel about a lot of the big games from this year, is how I feel that in a few years people are going to be like looking down on, like they're not going to be held up to high standards. Like I think God of War and Spider-Man, in a year or two, people are going to start being a little more critical of it, because I think people are still just wowed by the technical aspects of it. And those games on a technical level are perfect. Like they look and play phenomenally, but like when it comes to the gameplay, they're lacking. And I think eventually people will start to realize that they were more wowed by the technical than they were the gameplay. And so I think in a year or two, people will start being a bit more down on some of these bigger titles of 2018.
I think Octopath's going to be about the only exception to that.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, I just don't know if that's like going to be an all-time classic for the Switch. It might be. But yeah, this year.
I think the sequel has a better chance of being that classic, because I know a lot of people are really down on how the story stuff didn't quite come together. But it's a well-made RPG. So I really think the Octopath sequel has a lot of potential. Like that's one I expect big things out of.
Either a sequel or whatever game that studio makes next. I don't know if it'll necessarily be an Octopath sequel. I don't know if
I think they announced it's getting a sequel. It sold so well. I could have sworn they announced that they're going to make a sequel. Like it's already been greenlit. Maybe, I'm pretty sure anyways.
I just Googled it and it might not receive DLC, but a sequel is being discussed. As of September.
Okay.
So it's definitely just on the table.
Well, on that note, should we wrap this one up?
Indeed.
I think we should, in the future, do another, in a few weeks or whatever, do one on our predictions of 2019 and talk about what we're hyped for.
Oh, I'm hyped for so much.
Yeah, me too. I have a lot of expectations in 2019.
I had a lot of expectations for this year too.
Mm-hmm.
But Code Vein got pushed back.
Yep.
And a lot of the things I was looking forward to ended up being kind of shit.
Yeah. That's how 2018 felt to me. But from what I've seen and heard of other people who played some of this stuff from coming in 2019, I'm pretty hyped on some of it. So we'll see.
Indeed. All right. Well, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me on. This was fun.
I'll see you next time we do one of these.
Only as long as we find a way to shit on Detroit every time.
I don't want to keep shitting on it, though. As I said, I want to like it. I want to like all of his games. He just doesn't want me to like him. It's like an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, have a good New Year to you and everyone listening.
You too.
All right. Bye.